one of the interesting things that I really was really surprising to me doing this project and looking into the data was how strong the patterns are between all sorts of different project types, etc. And how predictive the data are. We did have more than 900 projects, and we got to sort of, once, you know, in AI you split the projects, the data you have, into a training set that you use to learn to train the AI algorithm, and then you use that on the second set that you don't use for training, the control set, to see how accurately it would forecast what happened to these other projects that the AI hasn't seen before and been trained on. And we found, even going down to that kind of split of only 10% of the available data points, so less than 100 projects, were able to forecast pretty accurately the 90% of the other projects that the AI hadn't seen. So that was something really interesting. The other thing that was really interesting around this is that we had a wealth of data. So these are more than 900 projects ranging from everything. So there's parks in there, there's buildings in there, there's drainage works in there, there's even dredging works in Hong Kong Harbour in there. So a whole range of, a very wide range of projects. Yet when we looked into what makes, when are the patterns that we use for forecasting these cash flows really different, then it came down to simply a split between building works and non-building works, and then a split between, in building works, between high and lower value, or sort of lower value and high value projects, and in non-building works, the other determining factor that really determines how the pattern of cash outlays over time looks like is time. So that was really an interesting insight. And so to some extent, right, what would we expect? I mean, sort of, even in Hong Kong, we've seen this, so some of it might be contextual, that might be true. Some might be about the particular ways of working, so there's definitely an element there. Some would be great to sort of get more insights whether that is replicable in other contexts. On the other hand, we've seen that, you know, for construction projects in Hong Kong as elsewhere, there are very strong patterns how these projects work, right? You have a mobilization phase, you have a performance phase, you have a closeout phase, so to speak. And that is very, very predictive. So say, for instance, in delay in mobilization is very noticeable and very predictive for future delays of the project. And so I think there are some of these patterns that really hold true independent of context, because we already looked at such a wide range of projects and different types of projects and found very, very little differences. So that gives me good confidence to say, and I actually think this would really be applicable to many, many other projects. Now, at least sort of where projects are very similar. Now, if you ask the question, you know, if there are some very special projects, say for instance nuclear construction projects or even nuclear decommissioning projects that have dramatically different time zones and time horizons, then I would say, well, we don't quite know yet. And that is definitely an area where further research is needed. And so where it would be really interesting to see and validate and sort of simply take a very similar approach and see whether it works, whether in a context like in the UK, and see, for instance, if they behave like road construction projects in Hong Kong and the patterns are strong enough to be generalizable across country settings, or even if we're looking into sort of larger time scales, but then, you know, applying a scaling factor, saying actually what we see in smaller projects and how these patterns behave is very similar to how sort of projects that stretch over decades behave over time.